Well, we'll go ahead and get started so we can get as many questions as possible with our panelists. So I'd like to welcome everybody to this workshop, Transitioning from PhD to Academia, where we'll have panelists Dr. Zaker Esteghamati and Dr. Zambrano Cruzatty, and I really hope I pronounced your names correctly. Perfect. So before we get started, just a brief overview of the NHERI GSC. The NHERI Graduate Student Council was really created as an environment to bring together graduate students from across the natural hazards research world and connect them with diverse mentors within the natural hazard community, create workshops like this one here, and have the opportunity to attend different natural hazards research and career workshops as well. We also highly encourage DEI conversations and have resources on our website for you to incorporate DEI into your own research, as well as to just be mindful and aware of that conversation. And we also are a space to just learn all about the impact of research in natural hazards practice, and a place where we can gain leadership, service, and funding opportunities to attend conferences and things like that. So it's really a great space for graduate students to come together and just learn, be mentored, mentor others, and just educate each other on what's going on in natural hazards research. Next slide. So if you're here and you're not actually currently a member, that QR code will help direct you to our to register to become a member. There are no registration fees. It's all completely free for students to join. So all you have to do is fill out the application, and you will be now sent all of the wonderful emails to get involved in this great organization that really just, again, like I was saying, is an opportunity to lead fellow grad students and to be mentored by leading faculty and experts in natural hazards research. So it's a great space for opportunities like this workshop, where we can educate ourselves on our career goals, but also, again, hear what's going on in the research world. So next slide. And so now we'll go ahead and introduce our speakers, our panelists. First, we have Dr. Mohsen Zaker Esteghamati, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Utah State University. Dr. Esteghamati's research group is the Stochastic Structures Lab and aims to address disaster resiliency problems in a holistic manner using a combination of data-driven modeling and engineering approaches. His ultimate objective of his lab is to improve the resiliency and sustainability of future communities through robust, risk-informed models, from design to construction and operation of the built environment. And then our second panelist is Dr. Zambrano Cruzatty, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering as well, but at the University of Maine. His research interests include the use of advanced modeling techniques to solve complex problems of geotechnical engineering and geomatics, including developing constitutive models for strain rate sensitive materials and the use of the material point method to study penetration into soils. Moreover, his current research interests include applications of geotechnical engineering to study soil erosion, mainly focused in coastal applications, with emerging research interests including coupled CFD MPM simulations for assessing scour and erosion problems, the use of discrete method elements to study soil behavior at high strain rates, and the installation of offshore foundations. So we would like to thank both of them for agreeing to be panelists on today's discussion, and we're excited to hear a little bit more about your advice for us interested in pursuing our careers in academia. So to get started and to kind of give everybody a bit of an understanding of how this is going to work, we have some guided questions that we're going to walk through that are a little bit more lengthy to kind of give both of our panelists the opportunity to explain kind of their experience, how they ended up where they are, as well as any top tips and tricks that they would recommend to us. And then we have some guided questions, a little bit more lightning speed, that we received from our registered participants. So we'll go through as many of those as we can and leave a little bit of time at the end for any additional questions that y'all might have. So to get started, I guess, Robin, yeah, sure, there we go. So the first question, what is your experience? Where and when did you graduate from your PhD? How successful, I cannot speak today. Any successful proposals? How many grad students do you currently supervise? Basically, in other words, what makes you qualified to educate us on our own transition from PhD to academia? So I guess, Dr. Zambrano, if you want to start.
Absolutely, and thank you for the introduction, Jordan. And so when I did my PhD at Virginia Tech, and I graduated in 2021, and I moved right away after that to an academic position locally, and the transition was a little bit. It took me a while to accommodate the way in which I managed the time as a PhD student versus now as a professor. But I think I successfully now learned how to do that, and I can talk more about that with you guys, about how that transition is, tips and tricks as well. And in terms of successful proposals, I've been here. I'm going through my third year at the University of Maine. And so far, I have been getting a few successes in proposals, mainly with NSF. And thank you, and thanks to NHERI facilities, by the way. So I'm very active on engaging with NHERI conferences, attending the workshops on the different laboratories that have given me a lot in terms of success in proposals. And the proposals I've gotten is because of that. So I'm currently running 2 projects, NSF projects, and one with the University of Florida, and the other one is it's more a collaborative effort between UMaine and the University of Portland State University. And so those are projects that are currently going on, and so that had helped me to bring more students to my lab as well, and build successfully over the things that I did as a PhD student. I continue to do as a professor now. What was the last part of the question? Can you remind me again? So if,
just your overall experience, just in terms of your transition. So you've again, any graduate students? You said you do have graduate students, so.
Yeah. So and I think like in terms of I think what probably people that transition directly from PhD towards faculty positions, depending on how you used to manage your time. I speak for myself, is that it took me a while to accommodate the way in which I use the time, and the first thing I did, and I think the University of Maine, they registered me on a program called the Faculty Success Program. I don't know if you have heard about it before. And by doing so, I learned so many things that I wasn't aware of. Like, for example, arranging mentorship networks, accommodating your time based on objectives. So you have to set your objectives, say for the semester, later break them down into weekly objectives, and then try to align your schedule based on those. And so all those little things that you usually don't think are that important are super important. Those are the details that can make a lot of difference when you are in this job position. And yeah, so I think that's what I can contribute for now. I will let it to questions, but I also pass it back to you, Jordan, if you have other thoughts.
Thank you. No, that's a good introduction for now, but we'll let Dr. Esteghamati go and answer the first question.
Sure. And Jordan, again, thank you for the invite. So when and where, so I guess, we are very biased because I graduated from Virginia Tech as well in 2021, so go Hokies. And after that, I did a very short postdoc. It was a kind of a special postdoc because I was very adamant to have teaching experience before going out of my postdoc. So it was a combination of 1 semester of teaching and 1 semester of research, basically. And then after that, I moved to my current role as an assistant professor at Utah State University. Now, I guess, going back to why am I qualified to sit here, this is a kind of invite for a humble brag. But I've been doing so far so good, at least. And, right now at Utah State, I'm the co-lead of the new state-funded Research Center on Earthquake Engineering, or the UEEC. As part of this center, which I'm a co-lead, we are trying to improve the earthquake resilience across the state of Utah, working with a lot of different grassroots and stakeholders to ensure that the future of all the communities, and we have very special rural communities over here in Utah, that they're protected against some of these hazards, specifically earthquake hazard, which is very prevalent in this area. Going back to other aspects of what I've achieved so far. So I've been in the current role for 1.5 years, so definitely less experience than Luis. But I have a few proposals that got funded. They're from industry, other places. And also I have, my research group is pretty fresh and new. I have 2 PhD students. I'm co-advising one, and I am the sole advisor for the other. And also, one thing that I want to emphasize that has been one big motivation for me to go to academia. I love working with undergraduate students. So I have the privilege of working with 4 undergraduate students. And right now I'm continuing to work with 2 of them. And I think that USU has been very great regarding the undergraduate research experience. And I want to give a shout out to NSF, because when I was doing my PhD, I was part of this REU experience, and that has been very critical in my decision to go to academia, because that was such an experience of working with undergraduate students and their passion and their curiosity and what you can achieve with such bright people, and you see the future, that I was like, okay, I can see myself doing this, So this hopefully kind of shows a bit of the things that I do and did so far. And I will be happy to talk about other things that you may want to know.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we're excited to have both of you here and your experience. And I appreciate the fact that they're somewhat different in the fact that you went through a postdoc there before starting in academia. So I guess for both of you, but starting with Dr. Zambrano, what are your top tips for making the transition from PhD to assistant professor? Things that you wish you knew before you started, helpful things that you did to prepare for interviews, things like that. So if you have 3 or 5 or just a few tips that you could give us that are probably the most important for you through this transition.
Yes, I think, probably something that I wish I knew before I started my position, I would say, is that I should have taken more time to, get along the campus, get to know more people outside my department. That's something that I'm recently doing. But I think that if I have started from that, probably, some things would have been accelerated, I think. So if you get a position, I would say, take your time to get to know well the institution. There are things that don't come in the interview, like some things nobody gonna explain you, and you're like there alone trying to say, okay, how do you do this? Right? Like how do you buy in equipment? So what's the steps? And so there are some things that nobody tells you, there's nobody telling you, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. So it's kind of you have to, when you start the position, I think you have to take your time to debrief that what you'll need to learn to get started, and are things like this, like what are the administrative procedures for this and that. I think that sometimes can take you by not being aware of those things can can be problematic. And so if there is something that I wish if I go back to in time, I will dedicate a little bit of time on learning more about these things. It's not so fun to do it, but it's necessary. Other tips, I mean, if you are preparing for going to academia and that's your objective, I think you have to align your mindset and your objectives towards that. And so an example of this is something I did when I was graduating is, well, you have to, first of all, look how the market looks like, how many positions are being offered per year on your field, and try to see also what sort of expertise is being asked for. And, you know, typically some job offers will tell very clearly what they're expecting about the candidates, but and you can get to think, oh, I know exactly what this job offer is describing, but you can probably also think how you can take what you know and align towards what they're looking for. And you will be amazed on how many things you can do with your learning or what the things you know for other disciplines. So sometimes John led the job description to be like so sort of a strict type of framework that you have to fit. Sometimes you have to be a little bit flexible to align what you know towards something that people is looking at. So basically use your knowledge as new lenses to look at things. And so that's another thing that you have to think of. So be ready to start looking how the market looks like. If you're about to graduate, so you have to start preparing your material. There's a lot of things you have to prepare. If you have opportunities at your different schools, look out for courses that teach how to prepare, for example, a research statement, a diversity statement, and things like that. I think, and Mohsen will agree with me perhaps, that we were very lucky that at Virginia Tech there were courses like this that you know, PhD students will take to prepare them towards academia positions or academic positions. And so if you have those opportunities, take them, if that's what you want to do. And many times there are also opportunities like this that different schools offer, and they are open to all people in the US. And just to mention one, I enrolled in a program called First Look at Faculty Positions at NYU. And that was also very instrumental. They also teach how you have to write these themes. They made a mock panel where you pretend to be in an interview with faculty. And all those things are very useful. Those experiences will account towards your success, I think. And so be aware of those things. If you're not aware, look at internet. I also open, you know, if anybody of you wants to send me an email, I will send my email through this and we can chat later as well. But, you know, be very active on doing this thing, if this is your objective. What else can I say about tips and tricks? Oh, this is another one. This is a good one, I think. So when you are preparing for your position, if you get selected for the last interview in a job offer, you have to prepare a presentation, right? You're expected to present about your research. Sometimes you're expected to do a mock lecture as well. And so if you are a PhD student, you're also about to graduate. So you also have to defend your thesis. And it's very likely that all these things will collide together. So you can feel like you have so many things to do. So you have to act smartly. So something that I did, for example, is that when I got my interview here at UMaine, I prepared my presentation in the same way I would have prepared my thesis defense. Yeah, so I tried to use the same work for two things, basically. And that's that was my thinking. So I don't want to do this presentation again. I just want to move little things here and there, but this is going to be used for two things. And so you have to act smartly in situations like this because you don't want to be in a situation that you end up working so much for for too many things. Searching for a job is a full-time job. This is something I learned as well, and that you have to be prepared for. And well, I will pass it to Mohsen now. Probably he'll remember some other things later.
Sure. Thank you, Luis. So I feel like this question has two parts to me. One is that the kind of skills you develop before going for an academic job market and being competitive in that job market, right? And one are the things that as you start your career as a faculty, you understand that you need them, right? So going to the first part, what you can do as a graduate student or postdoc to be competitive. And I want to tell something, I've been on 2 faculty search now. So I've seen both sides of this aisle, right? Going for the job and then being on the side that you're looking at the other candidates and applications, right? And I want to tell you something, like, it's really competitive. Like, I didn't have any idea how competitive that's gonna be, right? And when you are the graduate student, you think, oh, I'm doing great. I'm pretty sure everybody is doing great. But the issue is that everybody is doing great, right? So it's a very competitive market. And staying relevant and competitive definitely needs some sort of plan, right? So if your goal is academia, I would definitely say that you need to actively build that CV each semester, each day. I'm gonna even say each minute, because it's very hard to stay competitive. So it's not just, and you talk to students and you talk to a lot of folks and friends, and they're like, well, if I have, 20 papers, then I'm gonna get the job, right? But that's not like that. It's so many different factors that goes into that. And I can talk for 2 hours just about that, right? But I just want you to know that it's a very holistic thing right now because, people are publishing very good research. They're working in international collaborations. They have many experiences, right? Everybody that is on this saga, I would assume, is connected to NHERI, which is an amazing organization. And there are so many opportunities that people are developing that series, right? So definitely needs a bit of planning to see what is your uniqueness. That's what I'm going to say. You need to develop a uniqueness that makes you the expert that people want to have on their team. And if you start to think more in terms of what is your uniqueness, then these are the criteria that I need to get the job. That's where you're gonna, I guess, I'm gonna lose a very fancy term, but win the competition, right? Because it's all about, creating that uniqueness that position you in a situation that you're not competing with anyone else because you are unique on what you're doing, right? And that needs plan. So that's about that. And I will be happy to talk a lot in details about what do I mean by that, right? And then the other thing is, like, as you start your faculty job, I think like that was very shocking to me personally because it is such a different thing than my anticipation. And by different, I don't mean good or bad. It's just like it opens your eyes. And just to give an example, I didn't even know how much of my time gonna be spent on things that are outside of research. And typically you don't get all sort of trainings because somebody told me something that I really liked and was like, now you are developing a research enterprise. And at that time, that didn't mean much to me. But when I started to think, it's like, it's not just a research group, but you are developing human resources, right? And those people are working on projects and you're working on many aspects of that project that is not just a research, right? And making all those things requires a bit of going beyond, what you've been trained for. As a PhD student, I was trained to think about research, do good research, come up with my questions and solutions. But now I'm thinking in terms of many things that are not just research, and I need to make sure those things clicks for my research group to move forward. So I think if I just can summarize this, is about a lot of developing a lot of skills that might be beyond research for faculty jobs, and a lot of soft skills. I was a person that would love to sit in my room and think about the problem for 10 hours. But the reality of the current research world is that it's a lot of collaborations, a lot of networking, a lot of being mindful of how a project, even if the idea is good, can be unsuccessful because of many reasons that might not just be research related, and being aware and cognizant of that definitely requires developing a lot of those soft skills. So I will be happy about that as well. But I think like these are the two aspects that really make you be successful in what you are going to do in academia.
Wow, thank you for that. How would you say you made yourself stand out in your interview process? I guess for both of you, to kind of build off of your response and your tips, what was your unique factor that you think really pushed you over the edge?
And that's a great question. So, I mean, like, this is what I think. I don't know if the search committee at that time think the same, but my kind of like, I guess my pitch was that I was lucky to work in a very interdisciplinary environment. And, I had a very interdisciplinary background. I had a background in statistics and then in civil engineering. And then at the same time at Virginia Tech, and Luis knows about that, there was this program, and I would assume it was, again, NSF funded, but Luis, please correct me if I'm wrong. It was an NSF funded, yeah, it was a trainee program that was trying to create these folks that are competent in interdisciplinary research. And, my pitch was about, me having hands-on experience and having the background to connect the required skills for very complex hazard problems, and being able to show that it was not just a claim, but to show that with the record of the things that I do. And through that process, I also talked to so many people, and the people in those kind of programs, they were coming from all sorts of different hazard research. There were folks working on tsunami and flooding, and I was an earthquake person. And there was like urban planners, there was economists, there were, very different people that were working all together as part of that program, right? And that helped me create some sort of a vision on not just being very inside what I was doing, but being cognizant that if I want to expand on that, what are the things that are happening in other disciplines that can be leveraged in what I am doing, right? And I think like that was interesting to folks. And just maybe building on what Luis is saying, one thing that sometimes is overlooked is that each search committee, besides the job description, each member of that search committee has an opinion on what their future colleagues should be, right? And they all come together and they have their own opinion about that, right? And, sometimes, one aspect that you have gonna really clicks with everybody, because let's say you work on an interdisciplinary, aspect of hazard resiliency, and for some reason that search committee, they all agree that they want a person with that kind of a skill set, right? And that suddenly make you stand out from other folks that might not have the same background as you. So I just want to add that it's not just what you develop, but also there is a portion of what the search committee envision about their future colleague, because it's not just about the skills and technical things, but they're really choosing a colleague that's gonna hopefully stay there for a long time, right? And that also plays a role in the whole selection process as well.
Yeah, I will just to double that on what Mohsen is saying. There's so many dimensions that are being evaluated during that selection process. Some of them are written, some of them are not. But there are a few expectations that people will have. Like, for example, you have to do research. That's the obvious one. You have to teach as well, right? So you have to be a good professor. You have to serve. You have to serve your department, your institution, and outside your institution as well. And you have to mentor as well. So these are the ones that typically are you prepare a statement for. And but there are other expectations are not perhaps sometimes are not like very well described. Sometimes they are, depending on the job description. Like, for example, they're looking for somebody to collaborate. There is a team player, right? And taking back to what Mohsen was saying about making your profile unique, is that yeah, you have to make it unique, but also on every single of these dimensions, if you want. And something that in a way that you can do that, and I think that's the way I did it. This is my own experience, is that I try to mirror my previous experience when I was in Ecuador. I'm from Ecuador, to the place where I was moving, which is Maine. So I did a lot of research on what are the similarities of my experience I have in Ecuador, and that I can mirror in my presentation with Maine, and I did a lot of that. And now that I talk with my colleagues, they used to tell, "Oh, you did a great homework on learning where you move into, why the place where you're moving is going to help you build that career that you want to do." So, for example, I was working a lot on coastal geotechnical engineering, and Maine was a good place to go for me. You're a coastal state. I want to do coastal things. These are the areas I identify that Maine can improve, and that I can help, bring in those things. And I think when Mohsen mentioned this thing about making you unique, it's those little things, those little details that will make a lot of difference. Other thing that once you are invited to these, last interview processes, as Mohsen was mentioning, then everyone is a good candidate. And once you go there, I mean, people is trying to look, I mean, what it's gonna be like the personal connections, like as a person, who are you as a person, and that as well will play a little bit of a role again. So all these things combined together, I think, is what makes you unique. And I don't know if Mohsen will agree with me on that, but that's how you make your case for success. So you have to do a lot of research for, I don't know how many institutions everybody has to apply, but so that, as I mentioned before, that will take a lot of time to know how you will make your research enterprise successful based on the institution you're going, and how your how your success is also the success for the institution. And so I think that probably could make a good case of a uniqueness, if you want, on your research agenda.
Excellent, thank you. And kind of building off of that, our next question, somewhat two parts, but how did you identify and select the universities where you wanted to apply for faculty position? And another very common question that we saw that's probably not on the slide, when should one start applying and looking for these positions to help them make that transition, I don't know, as soon as possible, or you recommend taking time off in between, I guess. Dr. Esteghamati, if you want to go.
Sure. So I think regarding on when, as soon as you feel you have adequate CV to be able to apply, right? And what is the worst case that's gonna happen? You apply, you learn from it, right? And then you can apply next year. So I don't see any reason that somebody should exclude themselves and say, what, I'm gonna wait until I do 10 years of postdoc and 20 years of research before I am, because like in academia, and that's an issue. We become so self-critical, right? That sometimes it's very hard for us to understand that we're ready to do something, right? And I think let other people make that decision, and don't exclude yourself from that right? So just in a nutshell, I think whenever that person feels that they can write those statements and they can apply, and they're close to graduation and will be able to start the job if they get the job, right? I don't see any harm in doing that. And the best outcome is that you apply, you learn from it, right? And you're like, oh, okay, I've done this, and maybe I should work on this. Maybe you get some phone interviews, maybe even you go to the last interview and you don't get the job, but you learn so much from it that can be reflected to apply next year. Now, about choosing the place, I think that's a very important question, right? And I think all of us have some image of what we want to be. I always wanted to work in a research intensive institute. That's not the only way to become a faculty. If you love teaching, if you love other aspects of the job, the institutes and the description changes with what is the goal of becoming a faculty for you. So I just want to say, sometimes we have this picture that I should only apply for R1. These are not correct assumptions. You should really think about what is it to you. I'm starting to ask this question of myself a lot. What is a professor? And I think like whatever the answer is to you, you need to make that a criteria in what you want to apply. Maybe it's a teaching-based institute, an R1, an R2, an institute that serves, underprivileged communities. That might be the thing that is very important to you. So those criteria really define where you need to apply. But one thing that I want to mention, and that's a very important thing to the search committee, because they're going to get a lot of candidates, but they want to know, why are you applying to their institute, right? Because that's part of the story and that's part of the identity that you're making, and make them connect to you as a colleague, right? So I think if you're very cognizant of why you're applying to that institute, you can make a very good case and understand them why you are a very good fit for that institute. And that really will help with the application.
Yes,
Excellent.
yeah, I agree with Mohsen on what he's saying. The time to apply, well, if you're close to graduation, of course, and that's what you want. There's no other way. I think one semester kind of try to guess when you graduate, and then one semester before that is the last chance you have. But taking on what Mohsen just mentioned, is every single opportunity you have to take that to make your CV stand out. And and you should work right now towards that goal. At the last semester, what you're really doing is just compiling everything you did into a package, and so that's what that semester is going to be for. And then in terms of where to apply, I also agree with Mohsen say there's some occasions in which the geographical setup is important too for what you do. As I mentioned before, for me, it was to be in a coastal state. And yeah, for me, it wasn't, it wouldn't have been a good idea to apply to a, say, mid-eastern state, because I wouldn't have access or rapid access to coastal areas. And sometimes the geographical setup will be important. And the other thing I would just like to mention as well is that job offer. In the job offer, there will be a description of what people is looking for. At the beginning, I mentioned that you can accommodate what you do and use what you do as a lens to see how you fit on that track. But sometimes it's clearly that what they're looking for is not your expertise, and even though it could be on the same field. And so I think that job offer will guide you as well into, is this the place I have to apply or not, and things like that. And just to give you a anecdotal experience, so when I was applying for my position, I was also applying for postdoc position. That was in case nothing worked out. But yeah, so if you are on this part of your process as a PhD student, soon to graduate, you have to think of the different alternatives you have to go and plan accordingly. Yeah, the last part of the PhD it's proper, for sure, the most intensive one in terms of things you have to do and planning. Have a network of friends that will support you. I mean, for me, that was very important. Mohsen was one of those friends that always around you, giving you support, reading your materials, giving feedback, and that is very important. So as Mohsen mentioned, after you graduate, you have to rely on those networks as well. And it's not a solo game, it's a team game in reality.
Awesome, thank you. So kind of moving into more of lightning style questions, if one of you wants to answer as we start to ask it, I think we'll ask, there it is. Thank you. Well, we've kind of gone over how competitive it is. Y'all have addressed that quite a bit. And what skills?
I just want to mention something about this one in terms of skills.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as I mentioned before, some of the things you have to, in many positions, you should be able to teach, right? And so if this kind of a skill, try to get into opportunities of teaching opportunities, like being TA, you know, maybe you can teach a class a semester, or, you know, ask for opportunities like this so that you can build up this part of your profile.
Great. And do y'all think that, I mean, Dr. Esteghamati actually did a postdoc. Do you think that helped benefit you? Do you think that that's necessary in terms of applying to these faculty positions?
Well, I guess, you know, there's no correct answer to that per se. It's really specific, but let me put it in this way. Like, I can talk about my personal experience. You know, at that point, I was just, you know, trying to finish my PhD as soon as possible. And then, you know, I needed a bit of a transition to be able to even start to look for jobs. So postdoc really was necessary for my situation at that time, right? And I guess, you know, like, depending on each candidate and what are their trajectory, where they are at their journey, you know, like, the postdoc can be useful, or maybe it's not necessary. But one thing that I want to mention is that, and I don't think if this is a good trend or bad, but you see, like, for example, in structural engineering, there was a point of time that there was not many postdocs, but now we see a lot of people doing postdocs. So I guess, you know, it also really kind of depends to some extent on how the discipline gonna move as well. You know, if postdoc becomes a commonplace, like some disciplines, I know that, you know, you won't get a faculty job unless you do a few years of postdoc, right? So I want to mention, and I want to be cognizant that it also is dependent on the discipline and what is the standard practice. Not the standard is not a good word, but what is the more popular maybe practice of going through the academic jobs.
Yeah, so it sounds pretty subjective, but also depending on what your criteria at the time, or your qualifications are at the time. So for you, you wanted that teaching experience and you got that during your postdoc, but it may not always be required based on what you have. So thank you for that. Our next question is, what is the most important piece of advice you can share for developing your own unique and successful research program?
And I think Luis to go first on this one.
Well, I think that you have to construct a vision of what you do will be useful for society. And part of that can be given by your advisor, right? So your advisor probably is the one that, you know, wrote a proposal to go that project that now you are developing, and they had a vision, they had a reason why that will impact the world. And so you can construct on that, but also while you do your research and find things that probably nobody was expecting or nobody was looking at, you'll say, oh, this will be useful for this. This could be useful for that. And so then you start developing this sense of vision of where you can take your work forward. Another thing that will be very useful for this is that get out of your comfort zone. Look out for people in other disciplines and try to learn what they do, right? I will just mention again that program that we both attended with Mohsen, where we were put together with people that were working on social science, people that were working on different, and we took classes together. Sometimes we talk about similar things, but we have different words. But having these conversations with these people from different disciplines will open your eyes to fantastic opportunities. And then is when, you know, you can visualize that super incredible research program that, you know, that nobody sees because it's touching in another field, but you have the skills to kind of going there. And so that's kind of an advice for doing that. But yeah, you need to talk to your advisor and about, what's the implications of what you're doing. Probably you already know it. That's great. And you should. That's great, right? But also try to see, I mean, how can you expand over other things? Because if you are doing the work, you have that piece of knowledge to envision where you want to go.
Yeah, so communities like NHERI GSC, where we have, again, a wide
Exactly.
array of engineers, social scientists, having conversations here
Yes.
can help really start to spur new ideas for our own research. That's
No.
incredible. Thank you. Next question was, how have you been recruiting graduate students to work on your research? What are some priorities that you've had in mind during your first few years for you, Dr. Zambrano, for when you're hiring grad students?
Well, this is one of the things I wish I knew before I got. I think it's probably one of the most difficult parts of the job. I think it will depend on institution and institution. Like institutions that have high visibility will have a great. Everyone wants to apply to those institutions. Institutions that are not that visible, perhaps don't have that big bank of applications. So there you have to be more active. Like for example, creating like a job posts opportunities using Twitter or things like that. Help me spread the word about this job opportunity. Or you can also have a network of people that recommends other students. So for example, something that happens here, we at UMaine, we have a very good partner from Colombia that usually recommends very good students. So we have kind of a line of recruitment with universities in Colombia. But this is very difficult. I think that I still learning. I don't feel like super competent to tell what's the best way to recruit students, because everyone else seems very strong when they submit applications. Sometimes not, but and then choosing could become very, very difficult. And something I try to have an interview, look at for what's your technical competence, but also try to see how good is the student in soft skills like communication, leadership, things like that. And at the end, you have to, okay, this is the person that I'm going to make the offer. But I still feel that there is a little bit of good luck there. So far, everything is going well. But yes, it's something that I wish I can learn more about it. But I don't know, Mohsen, I'm passing to you because probably you have better tips there.
Thank you for the vote of confidence. Well, I don't want to, your points were fantastic. I don't want to add much to it. Just one thing that I think is important and overlooked is that it's not all about the technical skills, but there is a bit of about the personality and the attitude match as well. You can, I think, like anybody can learn to do anything, right? Like you put the time and effort and you can do anything that you put your minds into, right? But doing a PhD or master, you're gonna spend a lot of your time with your advisor, right? And if there is a good match, then it's gonna be an amazing experience. I was very privileged to have advisors that we had a very good relationship. We continue to have a good relationship. And, I could send them a joke and we would laugh, and it would have been amazing, while research is hard, it's a hard thing to do. So I just want to say, like when I guess, it's both sides. When I'm thinking about graduate students, I also think about, is there kind of like a match in what I think is important in the attitude, in the personality? Not there don't need to be a 100% match, right? Like, but on the important stuff, because we want to create a working relationship that, it's not just about doing research, but people call this mentorship, right? So it's a more holistic thing than just, okay, I'm going to define the project, you're going to do research, you're going to report back to me. That's not a mentorship, at least to me. And I think that's an important aspect of recruiting graduate students, to find that person that you can really work and you can teach them what you know and you can learn from them as well. It's not going to be just one way, but you learn from them while they're doing the research.
Well, excellent, thank you. And so I guess we'll move in quickly in our last few minutes to some of the questions in the chat. The first one being, do you think engaging volunteering activities such as arranging a research symposium, seminars, or being a chair of those graduate student clubs for support in your application process? Either one can, either doctors, sorry.
No, that's fine. Just a quick answer. I do think so. I think it shows, the breadth and the capabilities and the comprehensiveness of someone's skill, especially if they're research related and you're applying for a research position. That shows that you have those kind of soft skills that can show that you will become a successful faculty. So I have a very positive thinking about those kind of activities.
I will say as well, yes, but again, be careful and not to, oh, I will participate in all these things that, I should be able to. And so you end up doing things not in synergy with what you do, for example, in research. So let's take a synergistic approach. Like for example, if you work in, say, a community where there is something that you can help on that community. So try to build about this idea of synergies, of doing things for multiple objectives type of thing, so that you don't end up also in a situation where you are compromising so many things that you will not do all those things well. So I think on that regard, you just have to be smart on choosing what to do and for what reason. But yeah, that will help. But yes, try to be optimize your time doing synergistic activities as well.
Interesting, thank you. And another question from the chat, as a new faculty member, part of your responsibility likely involves writing proposals and securing grants, especially from the NSF, to support your academic pursuits. How do you identify ideas that are worth pursuing for grants?
So I just can add one comment, and I let Luis maybe continue because he has more experience in that. But I think there are, strategic plans that are published by different funding agencies, and that really helps you understand where things are going. Also, it's very important to go to these conferences and seminars and events and workshops, because usually there are members from those funding agencies, NSF program officers, they usually attend the NHERI events, right? And they talk about, some of the trends and some of the things that are needed from the community. And also, for example, NHERI has the NHERI Science Plan. I think it's an amazing resource to understand what is happening and what are the things that are needed. And I'm just talking about the natural hazards community, so hopefully that is relevant. But the NHERI Science Plan and those kind of strategic plans really can show you what are the ideas, and you can filter through them to see if there is an alignment between what you think is critical and what is needed by those agencies.
Yes, I will say as well that some of the ideas will come from the gaps that you don't get to solve in your research. So for example, when you are working on something and I wish I had the time to resolve this little problem, I couldn't. So that could be an idea for research. What you have to find is a way, or first, an institution that is interested in doing that. So you have to know what are the objectives of the different funded institutions. And then find the why is that important for the society? Why is that important so that you can get tax money for conducting that research? And so basically make the case for that idea. Other times happens in conversations, like you go get a coffee and start talking about some things with your colleagues, and you found something that you can do together that makes an idea as well. So but that's how I think the process is for me typically. And sometimes there's different funding institutions will have more applied, looking for applied science. Other institutions look for fundamental science. So then you have to, again, find the ways in which you can make the case for each of the different institutions' objectives. So knowing them is super, super important as well.
Yeah, thank you. And we had the opportunity to hear from Dr. Robinson on the third NHERI Science Plan, and that video is actually recorded on our website. So if anybody is in this transition stage and looking to build their own research portfolio, that's a great reference for them to use as well, to kind of get their research ideas fully fledged out for the interview process. But I guess I'll open it up at this time. If anybody has any like 1 or 2 specific questions that they'd like to ask to our panelists at this time, you can either raise your hand or put it in the chat. I tried to cover, if I missed a question in the chat, I do apologize. If you would like to reiterate it, feel free to do that as well.
I'm going to paste also the name of a book I got at some point for this writing grant things. Is super good. I mean, it's super entertaining to read as well. So you will read it and you will like it to read. So I post it there if you want to take a look on that.
Thank you for that recommendation. I guess to be respectful of everyone's time, since we're wrapped up and it doesn't really look like any specific questions are popping out right now, Dr. Esteghamati and Dr. Zambrano, would y'all mind sharing your emails with those in attendance today if they have any follow-up questions that come to mind? That'd be okay.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I think the emails were shared in the chat.
Yeah, they were shared.
Okay, perfect. Well, if y'all have follow-up questions and would like to contact them, Robin is currently dropping them in the chat for y'all, so feel free to reach out. But I'd like to give a round of applause and a thank you to our wonderful panelists for speaking with us today and giving us this opportunity to learn and just be educated from recent graduates. So thank you so much for coming, and have a wonderful day.